You're not ready for success. And I don't mean that as an insult. I'm saying it because I wasn't ready either. For a long time, I thought success would fix things. I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I built something big enough and achieved enough, I thought the anxiety would calm down. I thought the doubts would disappear and life would finally make sense. And yes, sometimes it did feel good. But what I didn't expect is to find out that success doesn't actually remove your problems. On the contrary, it amplifies them. Hi, I'm Alexis, and over the past 20 years I've built several companies, become a published author, and reached financial independence way earlier than I ever thought I would. And recently, I've started this channel to share what I've learned along the way. And here's what I've learned about success. We spend our lives learning how to grow, how to sell, how to hack the algorithm and make it. But we spend zero time preparing ourselves to deal with the aftermath, learning how to survive that win. Nobody talks about what happens when people expect more from you. Nobody spends time thinking what happens to your identity when it becomes tied to your performance, or when slowing down feels like failure and the thing you once loved turns into pressure. I've lived through that shift more than once, and I've watched other creators and entrepreneurs go through it too. The burnout, the panic attacks, the quiet breakdowns that don't show up on Instagram. And it's not because they're weak. It's because success is heavy. It gives you opportunities, yes, but it also takes things away. Things like freedom, anonymity, honest feedback, and even your sense of self. So in this video, I want to walk you through what I call the 5 stages of the success trap. Not to scare you away from your goals, no, but to help you prepare for them. Because if success is coming your way, and I genuinely hope it is, I want you to be strong enough to handle it without losing yourself in the process. I want you to be successful and get to enjoy it. So let's start with the first stage. Back in my 20s, I used to imagine success as a kind of filter, a process that would remove the insecurities and quiet the doubts. But that's not what happened. Success didn't polish me. It didn't fix my internal struggles. Actually, it magnified them. Because the small anxieties I used to carry quietly suddenly had a stage. And the little voice that wondered, am I good enough? Now had numbers attached to it, sales, metrics, comments. I mean, just think about it. If you have a small seed of self-doubt now, imagine how you'll feel when 100,000 people are watching your every move, waiting for you to make a mistake. And if you feel a bit anxious about your views today, imagine the fear you'll feel when you have millions of views and you could lose them all just like that, just because YouTube has changed the algorithm. Success doesn't create new flaws, but it amplifies the ones you've never dealt with. It raises the stakes. Just look at Mr. Beast. He's the biggest creator in the world, the pinnacle of YouTube success. And yet, he's openly talked about the crushing pressure of having to outdo himself every single time. And he's even admitted on camera that most of the time, he's not even happy. Or what about Emma Chamberlain? She had to step back because the very thing she used to love turned into a source of burnout. And actually, it's not surprising. Because before success, your problems are mostly external. You need gear, investors, clients, or an audience. But after success, the problems move inside. And when your internal foundation becomes shaky, the entire building risks collapse. And if that wasn't worrying enough, it gets worse. Let's talk about the identity trap. Here's why you aren't ready for success yet. Your identity is currently tied to your struggle. You see yourself as the underdog, the hustler. But guess what happens to that identity when the hustle is over, when your goal is met? Suddenly, you aren't a person who makes videos or who's starting a business anymore. You are the channel. You are the founder. You become a brand. And a brand isn't allowed to have a bad day. They have value that needs protection, so they have to be careful and consistent. And once you reach that point, you're struck by a shocking revelation. When you were starting out, you had a massive advantage. You were nobody. You could change your mind. You could be as messy as you wanted or you needed to be. You could fail over and over again, and not once you would put your identity at risk because you could frame every failure as a lesson. But when you're successful, that doesn't work anymore. If you're defined by your success, failure feels like an identity crisis. It's paralyzing because the outcome of every decision threatens your very definition of self. And when your self-worth is tied to a graph on a screen, your mental health is gonna follow that graph wherever it goes. Because if you're not the big YouTuber or the successful entrepreneur, then who are you? If you haven't answered that question yet, you're not ready for the numbers to go up. When my first book hit the shelves, I stopped being Alexis, the guy who likes to write, and I suddenly became Alexis, the published author. Just like that, I went from focusing entirely on my craft to pore over the sales reports in search of validation. To make things even worse, I unconsciously started filtering my own creativity through a commercial lens. I felt weak and anxious because success had become a necessity and failure an existential threat. So I started second-guessing every single sentence. As a result, the next two books were a struggle, and it was only after I managed to find my true self once again that I rediscovered my passion for my craft. If you don't know who you are without the metrics, success will steal your identity and replace it with a caricature. And when that happens, you'll start making terrible decisions, the worst of which might take you over the breaking point. Let's talk about the golden cage. This is where most creators and entrepreneurs actually break. In the beginning, you're free. You have 0 views or 0 revenue, which means that you have 0 overhead. You can film in your bedroom, pivot your business model, or take a week off because you're tired. And guess what? Nothing happens because the stakes are low. But then success comes, and success speaks the language of more. You start making real money, so you do what every successful person says you should do. You make the most of every opportunity that comes your way, and you scale up like there's no tomorrow. You hire a full-time editor so you can focus on content. You bring in a manager, a thumbnail artist, maybe a virtual assistant. You rent a professional studio space because you've outgrown your spare bedroom. And on the outside, your LinkedIn and Instagram start to look great. You're the founder, you're an employer, you're living the freaking dream. But here's the secret nobody tells you. Every time you scale up your business, you shrink your freedom. Suddenly, your creative passion has a monthly burn rate. You have a payroll. You have people whose rents and mortgages depend on your ability to feed the algorithm or to generate sales every single week. You aren't the pilot anymore. You're the fuel that feeds the engine, and that engine isn't allowed to stop anymore. It's a golden cage of your own doing, a trap that springs when you add complexity, cost, and structure just because you can, not because you should. The golden cage turns success into burnout, or even worse, self-betrayal. Because it's the moment when you realize that you've built a content factory or a business machine that requires you to perform even when you don't want to, even when you're hollowed out. You're not allowed to feel anymore. You cannot want or complain. You're a machine. And you keep going because stopping feels like death and slowing down feels like failure. So what do? You optimize, you endure, and slowly you lose yourself and disconnect. So if you don't decide what enough looks like right now while you're small, the momentum of success will decide it for you. And the machine's answer is always more, and it will keep being more until there's nothing left of who you were. And as the cage gets smaller, you look around for someone to help you find the exit, and that's when success taps you once more on the back. Let's talk about the loneliness of the win. Success creates a bubble, and inside that bubble you face two opposing forces that both lead to the same result: your total isolation. First, you'll have to deal with the honesty drought. When you're starting out, when you're the underdog, people have no problem being brutally honest with you. Perhaps your friends and family might try to embellish their opinions, but you can usually tell right away what they're thinking. And best of all, the market or the audience doesn't lie. The results speak for themselves. But success changes how people relate to you. As you grow, the people around you, your employees, your family, even your new successful friends, start to have a vested interest in your winning. They benefit from your momentum. And when people benefit from you, they subconsciously stop questioning you. Praise goes up, criticism goes down, and slowly you start to believe it yourself. You have the touch. You can do no bad. You're God's gift to humanity. And your ego swells so much that soon you're suspicious and even offended at the slightest criticism. So what happens? People become afraid of bringing things up. Just like that, you lose your most valuable asset, the truth. Suddenly, every idea you have is genius. Every video you produce is a masterpiece. Not because it actually is, but because nobody wants to rock the boat. Nobody wants to be the person who tells the guy paying the bills that he's losing his mind. The sad part is that when you stop getting honest feedback, you stop growing. And in the world of creators and entrepreneurs, if you stop growing, you're already dying. You just haven't noticed the smell yet. But wait, it gets worse, because while the people inside your bubble are whispering yes, a new voice appears outside: your haters. As your success becomes public, you attract a new kind of attention: the hordes of faceless critics. For every person who admires you, there's now someone who resents you simply because you represent the success they haven't achieved. They don't see a human, they see a target. This is the pincer movement of success. You're surrounded by people who are too afraid to tell you the truth, and a public that is too hateful to actually care about the truth. So what do? You retreat within. You become a prisoner of your own status, stuck in a quiet golden room where the only voice you can trust is your own. And even that voice is started to sound like a stranger. So how do we fix this? How do we build a life that can actually handle the weight of the wind? It's time to open the survival manual. If you've watched this far, it means you're serious. You don't just want to make it, you want to keep your soul once you do it. The good news is that because you're still in the building phase, you have a window of opportunity that those who are already successful would give anything to have back. You have the chance to build your success armor while you're still on the ground. And here are the 3 pillars you need to start building it today. First, you must have at least one part of your life that is strictly personal. Hobby, a sport, or a craft that you will never put on camera, never post on LinkedIn, and never try to turn into a side hustle. Because when your life becomes content or business, you lose the ability to just be. You need a sanctuary where you're allowed to be silly, stupid, or just bad. You need a part of your life where there are no metrics and no audience. And you know what's better than a sanctuary? 3. I have my family, my garden, and board games. They are essential parts of who I am that protect myself from ever being swallowed by my brand. Next, you need to define enough, ASAP. So get a piece of paper and write it down. How many subs do you need? How much monthly revenue? How many hours of work per day? If you don't set the finish line now, the golden cage will keep moving it forever. Because success is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. So you have to decide today what a balanced win looks like, so that when the machine screams for more, you have the power to say, no thanks. Finally, you have to build your truth circle. You need 2 or 3 people who know you very well and who won't care about your status or be afraid of your bank account when you make it big. And then, once you find them, you have to give them the license to kill your ego and build the confidence to handle their honest feedback. If you do, you'll be able to face success armed with a compass that always points towards truth. Do this, and you'll thank me later. But until then, don't rush the growth. Don't pray for the viral hit yet. Look, I genuinely hope you succeed. I hope you'll get that gold play button. I hope you'll build a business or achieve the financial independence I was lucky enough to achieve. But more than anything, I hope that once all that happens, you'll be there, truly there, and you'll be able to enjoy it.